Good morning, good afternoon, and for some of you, good evening, and welcome to the latest in the series of AGIF Sustainability Webinars in 2021. My name is Eric Lynch, and I'm the CEO of the Asian Golf Industry Federation, and I'll be your host and facilitator for today's webinar. By way of background, the AGIF launched the series of webinars in the late 2020 and ran 10 online seminars in the latter part of last year. The feedback and participation from the global industry was very positive, and the webinars have now become a mainstay of our activities and in post-COVID period time. Most every week on Thursdays, we'll continue to deliver webinars on turf at club management with industry leaders to supply career building information to professionals in Asia and the rest of the world. We have a great lineup of speakers generously willing to share their time and expertise with us. A bit about the AGIF. The Asian Golf Industry Federation is a not-for-profit membership federation comprised of suppliers and facilities in the turf club and sports industry. The federation focuses on building sustainable practices in both the environmental and economic aspects throughout the Asia-Pacific region. And we believe strongly that the key in development of sustainable industry is the education and empowerment of the professionals in the industry, hence events like this today. We have developed the AGIF certificate in greenskeeping, which is supported by the RNA and 5 AGIF member organizations. The CIG focuses on developing the skill set of the greenskeeper turf professional throughout Asia. We also focus on club management education and our partners with the Club Management Association of America. We have rolled out the education in Asia for the pathway to the certified club manager degree. The CCM is considered the gold standard in club management industry globally, and managers in Asia can achieve the necessary education here in Asia as a result of the partnership with the CMAA. It is vital to have strong partners in implementing education throughout Asia, and our education is recognized for credits by the PGA of America, the PGA of GB in Ireland, the PGA of Australia, the PGA of Japan, the Club Management Association of America, and the GCSAA. Due to the travel restrictions from COVID-19 pandemic, webinar is the only way we can continue to deliver education at the moment, but we will resume education events when travel restrictions ease, and we'll keep you posted on these developments. Over the past few months, we spent a lot of time improving our digital offering and membership benefits. For more information, please log on to www.agif.asia, as well as our LinkedIn and Facebook company pages. Please also sign up for our weekly newsletter to join the 10,000 plus industry contacts receiving a weekly industry update. Lastly, the AGIF is a not-for-profit federation, and now more than ever, we rely upon membership dues to operate. So if you like what we do, and or you think that your facility or company will benefit from communicating with the industry, please note that our membership benefits are substantial, can be seen on our website under AGIF membership benefits. Please take a look. And if you're already an AGIF member, thank you. Your ongoing support is greatly appreciated. On to some housekeeping issues. Our speaker today, Stephen Tucker, will present for roughly 50 to 60 minutes, and then we'll have a 30-minute Q&A after that. And the chat and Q&A functions are on throughout the session. So please feel free to ask questions, which we can then voice to Stephen during the Q&A session. Now on to the main event. I'd like to welcome Mr. Stephen Tucker to the AGIF Sustainable Series webinars. Stephen is the Director of Golf Course and Landscape Operations at the Four Seasons Hotels and Resorts. Stephen began his career in the golf industry at 15 years old, playing competitive golf at Sewanee High School and in numerous US Open and Nike Tour qualifications. Following graduation, he worked on a golf course grounds crew in the local area before enrolling in the Lake City Community College in 1998, where he graduated with 2 scholarships in turf equipment management. Stephen started in his first equipment manager position at the age of 21, and over the years has continued to advance before reaching his current position, managing the equipment operations at the Four Seasons Resort in Orlando, Florida. During Stephen's career, he has written and been featured in articles in Golf Course Management Magazine, Golf Course Industry Magazine, and the USGA's Green section. In 2006, he and a few of his colleagues around the world started the International Golf Course Equipment Managers Association, where he served as president and chief executive officer. So, Stephen, thank you for coming and welcome.
Oh, my pleasure, and thank you for having me. Looking forward to it. First time speaking to the group in Asia. As as Eric has said, I've spent quite a bit of time, with the association when we created IGCMA, and in doing that, got an opportunity to travel around to quite a few countries to speak and put on presentations, and never got the opportunity in Asia yet. So this is my first Zoom presentation as well. So hopefully all goes well, and we'll get this going. All right. So as Eric said, graduated from Lake City Community College in '99 as an equipment manager. Best way I can put it is I loved golf, and so I wanted to get in the golf business. And one of the things is that I didn't realize is that when you work in the golf business, you don't get as much playing time as you thought you were going to get. And so from my standpoint, that was why I originally got in. And I don't play as much golf anymore as I used to. I've been an equipment manager at public, private, resort, and top 100 clubs over the last 20 years. Hosted over 14 PGA and LPGA Tour events, and then do equipment management consulting pretty much all over the United States, Canada, Mexico, Costa Rica, at some of the top clubs in the country. Did that over the last 4 or 5 years. I think also one of the great things is seeing the differences in how maintenance is done outside of the U.S. and so that's been a treat to kind of understand how everybody else does it, and share some of the ideas that I've had and done. And so I'm looking forward to sharing some of those with you today. Also, after 20 years of being an equipment manager, had an opportunity to take over here at the Four Seasons in Orlando as a director. You could imagine after 20 years of consulting, seeing some of the top clubs in the country. Outside of equipment, I've also done a lot of classes on agronomy, and so in doing that now, I've kind of taken on the other side of the fence, so to speak. So looking forward to more of that, more learning, and so on. So in the business, there's a couple things that I've learned, right? Over the years, I think we all gather information and try to figure out, the best ways of doing things. And I've really, Four Seasons and having worked for Ritz-Carlton for 7 years. And so I've really spent about 15 of my 20 years as an equipment manager were spent in the hospitality side of the business, working for both Four Seasons and Ritz-Carlton or Marriott. So there's a couple things that I really learned in that, and there's 3 key things that are important to know. And one is the people, the product, and the profit, and in that order. And those things are the 3 most important things of running any business, whether it's a golf course, whether you're selling food, whether you're running a hotel, any of those things. These are the 3 most important things, and I'll kind of explain from the golf side of things why that's the case. So the first thing is, where do we get the people? I think, and especially here in the United States, we tend to hire everyone based on what club you were at last, and thinking that that's a great qualifier for working here at our club. If you're at one of the top clubs, then you should be able to be the equipment manager at our facility, or the superintendent at our facility, or whatever the case may be. And what I've found is that isn't necessarily the case. Having visited numerous top 100 clubs, I've been impressed by some, and I've not been impressed by quite a few. And so just because someone's been at a high-end club doesn't make them qualified or the best candidate, so to speak. And so from my standpoint, when I'm looking at employees, I look at their personality first. So, if you can't go into a facility and talk to the equipment manager or express some concerns you have, or without getting some sort of, negative response, or, man, I'm not going in there. That guy's yelling and throwing stuff, and whatever the case may be. If, that doesn't set a good tone for the team. And when the team doesn't want to come into the shop, it certainly doesn't help keep the equipment running the way it's supposed to run, number one. But you never know about the problems that are occurring on the machines either, because they don't want to come in there. So they'll just, lay a weed eater up on the wall somewhere, or put a blower somewhere that's broke, and then the next person goes and gets it, and it's not functioning, and no one's reported it. So I think overall, first things, you got to have the right personality. I think after you look at the personality, then you can kind of look at what skill level is. A little bit different for me in my situation, and hiring an equipment manager, having worked in the position for 20 years. I wasn't looking for skill near as much as I was looking for the right individual, because I could teach them those things that they needed to learn. And so from my standpoint, the skill didn't mean as much. But for others, that may be a different situation. But I can guarantee you, it doesn't matter what the skill level is if the personality isn't right. So you can have the best technician in the world that has a bad personality, and it won't be the right fit for the team. And I'll explain why that's the case as we kind of go through this. Then you evaluate the value of that personality and skill, right? So there's a lot, let's talk about pay for instance. So we're paying an equipment technician, or any job for that matter. What the tendency seems to be is that, all right, well, the average pay in this area is X, Y, and Z. Okay. But what is the talent of technicians in that area? Or what is the talent of spray techs in that area? Are you interviewing a guy that's probably got better talent than everyone else? Shouldn't the value of that position, how much equipment they're taking care of, what the total, cost of those assets are, shouldn't that be involved in what you end up paying that individual? What their responsibilities are going to be? Are they just taking care of equipment? Are they doing their budget? Are they taking care of the facility? What does that job description look like? And then what's a realistic pay to pay someone? And I'm just not a big fan of, well, the golf course down the street pays, 45, so we should pay 45. Well, this guy may be 10 times better than the guy that's making 45 down the street. And so, if you want to be able to hire good talent, and you want it to be able to keep them, then you need to pay the person based on what their skill and personality levels are, so that you can continue to maintain that. And trust me, the value will be shown and will be realized. So I know here in the United States, and I don't know if it's the same over there, retirement's going up and schools are virtually gone for technicians. So what it's come down to here is stealing technicians from others, or training technicians in-house. The big thing about schools is the technician business isn't something that's widely advertised. I mean, I don't remember being in high school thinking I want to be an equipment manager. I knew I liked to play golf, and I think when I was playing golf, that's when I realized there were actually jobs on the golf course to do things. But no one goes to school in their mind that they want to be an equipment manager at some point. So, there's no advertising, there's none of that's going on. And I remember when I'm probably at the end of that age group where we actually worked on cars with our parents in the garage. Now everyone takes their cars to get them repaired. Okay, so that learning kind of at home with your parents about how that mechanical skill or mechanical trade, that's gone away, because everyone, so some of these kids may be mechanically inclined and don't even know it, because they've never been put in front of a wrench, or understand how engines work and that type of thing. So the other part, obviously, stealing from others, we hate to do that, but at the same time, we've got to run a business. So that's sometimes what it comes down to. The unfortunate part about that is it's really who can pay more than the other golf course can. And that ends up being the high-end private clubs that can afford to pay higher salaries to steal these guys from other golf courses. And So one of the things that I encourage everyone to do, and sometimes budgets don't allow, but you should always have an equipment manager and an assistant technician as well. So that way, when the equipment manager moves on, you have someone that can move up into that role, and you're not by yourself with nothing. And so thinking about these plans in advance before you lose the person or before the person goes to the next job is important. So that way you're already ahead of the game, and then you go and you look for an assistant technician to fill that position, and that may be someone off the crew. I know lately a lot of the golf courses that I go to, that's what they're doing, is they're pulling guys that are somewhat mechanically inclined off the crew and training them so that they can have, so there's more technicians in the business. I mean, they know it's a matter of, most know it's a matter of time before their technician goes and moves up and goes to another golf course. So they've got to have someone to fill that. And then make it appealing. It's not just about the money. Do you offer tools, or does that person have to pay for their tools? If they have to pay for their tools, well, that could kind of not lure away some of the newer or younger guys, right? Because it's a pretty big investment to buy your own tools. So when the club has their own tools, number one, the club's always going to need the tools. So whether you have an equipment manager there today or not, you're always going to need tools to work on equipment. So the last thing you need is your equipment manager to quit and your tools walk with them, because they're their tools. And now you have nothing. Even if you had a guy in the shop that was mechanically inclined, if you don't have any tools, you can't get any work done. So I think for most clubs, it's a good idea for the club to have their own tools. So that way you always have some. The other is a clean shop. I know when you think about it like this, if you walk into a hotel that you're staying at and you're paying a large fee to stay there, and you walk into the front lobby and it's a mess, and they're, tearing up a meeting room, and they've got plastic up to keep the dust down, and you've got all that going on, and you're paying this high rate, what's your impression? Well, your impression is, man, I don't think we got a very good deal. And you may decide that, okay, let's just go to another hotel. Right. So what's the difference when you walk into a shop for an interview, and you walk in, and let's just say you're going to interview at 5 different clubs to see which one you want to go to. And 4 of the 5, the shops are nasty. You can barely, see from one side of it to the other. You got oil leaking all over the ground. No one sweeps it or mops it or cleans it. And you're trying to attract talent. So if I'm interviewing at 5 places and I look at and I've got to go to the one facility that may not pay as much, but maybe close, but their facility is 10 times better. Just that impression alone is going to lure me that direction, because I would much rather work in that than have to go over there and try to figure my way out on where I'm at that other facility. So give that some thought. I know over here, popular in Florida and some other places, is having air conditioners in the shops. And so, obviously that's expensive, and that's for the higher end clubs, but that's something that's appealing to technicians. Weekends off, that's a tough one generally, because, if there's a tournament on a weekend, you need the technicians to be there. But, these are types of things that are important for guys. They like that time off, and quality of life. Working 65, 70, 75 hours a week. That's tough for everybody. One of the biggest things that, my wife kind of told me is, you spend more time at work than you spend at home. And so if you look at it, that's right, because by the time we tend to get home, then we're eating, we may talk to the family a little bit, and then we're going to bed. So, if you look at, even myself, 20 years being in the business, lost a lot of time, got 2 girls. And so lost a lot of time with that. So again, quality of life is important for people as well. So what I'm saying here is, if you put a combination of these things together, maybe I can't pay as much, but maybe I can offer this quality of life side where, at a club that you're going to make more money, you're going to work 65 hours a week, but here you can work 50, 45. And so we'll pay you a little bit less, but you get more time at home, or you can go, and if you must work, you can go and work another job. So that's one thing to look at. All right. So how do we keep the people? And it all boils down to one thing, and I can't hear you guys, but I'm sure you will laugh, sand. So that's what keeps equipment technicians. It just keeps them employed, because the more of this we put down, the more work they have to do. So that's a big one. And I'm kidding, but I'm not, right? So it's not the point I'm trying to make here is it's not really about the sand. It's about the why. And what I mean by that is, why did you put the sand down? What help everyone understand, not that you're doing something, but why you're doing it. Because two things happen here. Number one, when you explain to someone why you're doing something, they're learning. They're understanding why you're doing what you're doing. Okay. And so from my experience, when I do something, I want to get buy-in from everyone else, because the more buy-in I get on what it is that I'm doing, the more I'm going to get out of that individual. If I'm working against that individual because I'm going out and I'm putting sand down and he just ground reels and I don't care, and this is what we're going to do because that's what we do here. This guy's going to be mad, and we're going to be working against each other. And so one of the big things that we miss is this, because we get in such a hurry, or we've got so many other things that are on the list. And this isn't just for technicians. This is for the rest of your team, talking about what we're doing and why we're doing it. Why did we decide to sod this? Why are we using this sod versus that sod? What was our decision why did we redo cart pass instead of redoing drainage? What are the reasons behind some of the things that happen? They're obviously thinking it. And so the more of that information that we can freely share, not only do they learn something, but you help get them on your team and headed in the same direction that you are. We're great at the what and how of our business. We can tell you what to do and how to do it. It's just that why that we have trouble explaining. So we're putting out, and this is how you kind of look at it, right? We're putting sand out today. So we're going to need the top dresser, right? Well, wouldn't we have known that a couple days prior to that, so that technician could probably have gotten that top dresser ready before, and let me explain this a little bit better. So when we plan our days to manage the golf course, we know what we're going to do and we plan that day out. And so that way, the whole team is ready when we come in the morning, right? So we know what the plan is going to be and what we're going to do. And what happens when the pro shop says, oh, we got a shotgun this morning? Well, what do you mean we got a shotgun? You didn't tell us you had a shotgun, and I've got all these other plans. Well, we got to hit the brakes, and then we've got to pull everybody back, and we've got to reassess on what we're going to do to stay away from the shotgun. So how is that any different than an equipment manager that has a plan on what he's going to do today? And then we come in and say, hey, we want to try this verticutter, and can you put the top dresser on? And, we're going to need this, we're going to need that. So all those plans that he had, we've just squashed and decided we're going to go this direction. And so then we come back later and we say, well, why aren't the greens mowers ready for tomorrow? Well, you just gave me 7 more tasks that I needed to get done today. So I couldn't grind them, or I couldn't do this, or I couldn't do that. So sometimes we're our own worst enemy when we're doing some of these things, and we need to start thinking about everybody else so that we don't put ourselves in these situations. Again, we want people to be on the same team we are. We're not the team. Everyone is. So what if we said like this: we are top dressing today, and this is what the reason for top dressing is: dilution of organics, filling in aerification holes, things like that, right? So we're explaining what top dressing does, what it is, what it's going to be. And so now as an equipment manager, I can look at that and say, okay, well, that makes sense. He's not doing it because I just ground the reels. There's actually a reason that this is happening. And so the more that they know, the more they're going to be able to help us as well. If we see disease on a green and the equipment manager's out there checking cut, we can talk to them and say, look, so this is Pythium, right? This is what it looks like. So if you ever see this out here when you're checking greens, please call and let us know. So now you've got another set of eyes out on the golf course as well, right? So it isn't just you stay in the shop because that's what your job is. I want everyone to be, we've got 100 acres. I want everybody out there looking for things that aren't right and reporting those back so that we can address as we need to. So what does it matter? You know, why should we spend all this time doing all of this, and how does it change the perception? So there's one major thing here, and that's you want engaged employees, right? And I'll read this. Employee engagement is the emotional commitment the employee has to the organization and its goals. The emotional commitment means engaged employees actually care about their work and their company. Employees that want to go the extra mile want to stay late. They want Reels Perfect. They want to get involved with associations, and they want to get continuing education. All right. So all of us have teams of individuals, and we could point out the ones that we know are here and want to do a great job. And we know those that are here just to get the paycheck and go home. So the question is, how do you get the ones that are punching out and going home and not caring about the work or the quality of work that they're doing to be on the same page as the guys that are engaged? And the question is how many engaged employees do you have, and how many disengaged employees do you have? And if that number isn't higher on the engaged side, well, how does that work as far as when you got tasks that you need done, or you know, you've got guys that have called in, and so you've got more work that needs to get done today, and you want these guys to really put a lot of effort in to get those things done. Well, they don't care, right? They don't care what all you need. They're here to work their time and go home. So what's the difference when I have an employee that actually cares about what they're doing? When I actually care about what they have going on, and I ask them questions about, hey, you know, how's your wife? You know, how's things at home? And actually care about them as a person, and not so much worried about, you know, what we're getting done and how quickly we're getting it done. If you had a whole crew of guys that were fully engaged, what would be the difference in work that would be done, and at what quality level would that happen? So think about that for a minute, right? Think of the employees that you have, and how many of them you could name off right now that you know are just fully engaged guys and that want to do the best job that they can and care. And then the rest of the team that just punches out and goes home. And how do you change that dynamic, right? So not engaged employees are essentially checked out. They're sleepwalking through their workday, putting time but not energy or passion into their work. And then you've got the number 3, which is the guys we probably should get rid of, but we don't because we need them, because it's a number. It's another greens mower. It's another fairway mower that we can use, and we can't find other people. And, you know, the one thing I would say to that is you shouldn't, I mean, if you've got a place that everybody wants to work, the people will find you. You don't need to find them, because the people that are working at your facility right now are going to go out and try to find good guys to join their team. So you want to be the place that everybody wants to work at, not the place that, you know, if I had to, I'd go over there, but I've heard that it isn't a good place to work. So I've got a video, and hopefully this plays. It's just, it's going to be short, but I think it's really important to kind of hear. And this is a great guy. So he's got a couple books that I've read, Simon Sinek. If certainly look up his name. There's quite a few leadership books that he talks about, but you know, everything he kind of says really hits home, and I thought it important. And they do mention 4 seasons, and that's not why I put it in the video, but the story is good. So let me see if I can get this going. All right.
We're now working together to compete at a much higher level. I'll tell you one quick story. It's a true story that captures it just so perfectly. I was staying at the Four Seasons in Las Vegas, which is a wonderful hotel. And the service there is really great. The reason it's such a great hotel is because of the people who work there. And I had an experience with a young man by the name of Noah. And Noah's a barista in the coffee shop that they have just there in the lobby. And I was buying a cup of coffee, and Noah was charming and funny and engaging. And I think I gave 100% tip. I think my $5 coffee, I think I gave a $5 tip. I mean, this guy was great. I loved talking to him. He was a joy. And I asked him, do you like your job? He said to me, I love my job without skipping a beat.
Wow.
And I asked, what is it that the Four Seasons is doing that you love your job so much? He says, without skipping a beat, he says, throughout the day, managers will walk past and ask how I'm doing and if there's anything that I need. He said, not just my manager, any manager.
Wow.
He says, I feel supported here. He says, quote, I can be myself, right? Then, it's magic. And then he says to me, I also work at Caesar's Palace. And there, the managers go around to make sure that we're doing everything right and catch us if we do something wrong. He says, when I go to work at Caesar's Palace, I keep my head just under the radar because I don't want to get in trouble. He says, I just want to get through the day and make a paycheck, right?
Wow.
Same person.
Right.
The experience that I have at the Four Seasons will be diametrically opposite to the experience that I have at Caesar's Palace, not because of Noah, but because of Noah's leadership.
Right.
And the joke is, if I were to go talk to the managers over at Caesar's Palace and say, you know, it's you, they'll say, but you don't understand. We cannot get good work out of our people. Look, no matter how hard we try and how hard we push them, they just don't. So we either have to replace them or push them harder. No, we respond to the environments we're in. Get the environment right, you get the right behavior. Get the environment wrong, you get the wrong behavior. If that is what is happening, it is because of leadership, not because of the people.
Yeah, there was a really famous cartoon back in the 80s, The Beating.
All right, so great point, right? It's easy to blame. It's easy to blame everyone else for sometimes our lack of leadership and us not creating the right environment for them to succeed. I know, and I'll tell a quick story. One of the best tools that I've found was that trying to figure out what employees are very skilled at details. You know, what employees really are good detail people, right? So one of the things I've noticed in working for Four Seasons is they want to put the right people in the right job. And when you can identify which employees are high detail employees and which ones aren't, doesn't make one employee any better or any worse than another. But let's just take a task like cutting cups, right? You want someone detailed to cut cups because you don't want paint all around on the grass around the edge, or, you know, the cups all frayed up and doesn't look good. You want someone very detailed that's going to wipe the flag down. That's going to, you know, blow off the area around the cup. That's going to see the tree limb down and pick it up and put it in their cart, right? But you don't need 20 of those people. You need a handful of them, but you need to be able to identify which of those individuals are high detail. So what do you think happens when you take a non-high detail person and you put them in a high detail job? Well, they're not going to succeed. So how do you identify the people that are high detail and not? Well, you know, there's a personality test that's called predictive index, right? And we utilize that when we hire employees, and it helps us to understand what type of an employee that they are, what their strengths and weaknesses will be. So that way, as their leader, we will be able to manage to those things. And sometimes those traits won't fit with the job that we are actually trying to hire for. So it helps us narrow down that candidate pool. So certainly something to look up in the future, predictive index, and thinking about that, because putting the right people in the right job is as important as anything. Not every employee is bad. Not every employee is meant to cut cups or, you know, use a chainsaw or use a front end loader. You know, some people pick up things much faster than others, but it doesn't make them bad employees. You just got to put them in a job where they can be successful. All right. So the next part of that, and I spent a lot of time on leadership and people, because that's the most important thing. Because regardless, if you don't have good people and you don't have good leadership skills, then the product is going to suffer. Because quite frankly, we are managing the people that are taking care of the product. So if you've got people that are fully engaged, then they're going to do a better job taking care of the product. All right. But they also need to understand what the expectations are. And this is the one thing we do very poorly. We know what our expectations are. They're all kept right up here. And when somebody doesn't meet those expectations, what do? We go out and we say, nope, this isn't how you do it. You know, this is what you need to do. Instead of this, what's on the screen here, right? It's a this is for the shop. This is a shop standards manual. It's creating standards. So if I've got an equipment manager that's setting height of cut on a greens mower and we're mowing at 110 thousandths, and he thinks it's okay to be anywhere between 110 and 115. All right. Well, I may think that we need to be between 110 or 111. Well, what happens if I tell him that that's not meeting my expectations? Well, what are your expectations? I don't know what they are. All right. So now I've got to tell him, right? So I tell him, okay, look, 110 to 111. That's where we need to be. Okay. So we set that standard. Well, what if we did that for everything? What if we walk through every step of setting up a cutting unit or grinding or servicing equipment or cutting cups or mowing fairways? And what are the standards that we want each employee to adhere to so that we don't have all of that stuff stored up here? We have it down so everybody else can see it. Because what your impression is and what you think is good may not be what I think is good. And so how can we expect 20 other guys or 15 or 10 or whatever, how many employees you have, how can you expect all of them to meet a standard that they don't know exists and that their standard isn't as high as yours is? It's never going to be, right? We want the golf course always to be the best condition it can be. Well, that every employee may not look at it that way. So creating standards, whether it be for the shop, for the golf course, is certainly something that should be done at every golf course so that everybody knows what we're trying to achieve and what the tolerances are of all the different things. All right. So there are really two things at a golf course. When I got into the equipment business 20 years ago, turf equipment business, I tried to figure out what the most important things about my job were. In other words, what do I have to do to not lose my job? And there were two things that really stuck out to me in the first couple of years. And number one was I needed the place to the facility to be clean and organized. Because if you look at the pictures on the top, those two pictures, that's what it looked like when I walked in the door. And the pictures at the bottom are what it looks like now. Every day. The guys mop the floors, they clean it. Now, this facility was built in the early 90s. Okay. And so we made it look like this just by putting some paint on it, pressure washing it, and moving some equipment around and organizing it the way it needed to be done. So huge difference, huge impact. If you walked into this facility, would you want to work there? So if you're interviewing candidates for jobs, do you feel like this would be a place that they'd want to work at, not necessarily regardless of pay, but wouldn't pay be a little bit less of an issue if you walked in and like, man, this is a place I need to work? What do you think the salesmen think when they walk in the facility? They may not go out on the golf course, right? But they'll go to 20 other golf courses. And we want them to say what? Man, did you go over that have you seen Four Seasons? That place is just crazy. It looks great. Right? That's the impression that we want the industry around us to get, that, man, we're stepping it up a notch at our operation. And so now they have something they have to compete against. So think about your members or an owner coming down to the facility and feeling uncomfortable because there's grease and stuff everywhere and they need air. All they needed was air in their tire or to jump their car off or whatever the case may be. And they walk into this versus this. Big difference. If you were the owner, and this is how I look at every operation, is if I was the owner, would I spend money on equipment, or do I think they're taking care of everything? If I walked into this, would I feel pretty comfortable about investing $1 million in equipment? Big differences, right? The impression, it's the impression that you give. I had a architect come in about a week and a half ago and walked into our facility and said, man, I've been to a lot of facilities. This is the best one I've ever been in. Well, we painted the floor, we pressure washed it, and we moved some equipment around and organized it. So it doesn't take a lot. It just takes a want to. It takes engaged employees that want to make everything look great, and B, you know, a technician that wants to have a facility that looks better than everyone else's. And at the end of the day, just continue to strive to be better. Okay. Next is a standardized training and safety program. Okay. I don't know how many times I see on whether it's Facebook or Twitter or whatever about employees that, you know, don't take care of equipment or somebody wrecks something or whatever the case may be. So what we did was we developed a training program. There's 5 levels to it. When you get there as an employee in your first 30 days, you have to complete level 1 training that's on the left there. And attached to that is those where it says JSAs, that's what's on the right, our job safety analysis sheets. We have a trainer that when we get a new employee, they will walk them through and train them on all of these items. And then if they don't do the item, if they can't drive a cart well, or if they can't operate a weed eater, then they don't get signed off on to do that task. They'll be in bunkers or they'll be doing something else, right? So we do that through all 5 levels to make sure that there's accountability for the training. We're not just walking someone through how to drive a triplex and then sending them out there on it. I want to make sure that we know how to drive it, that we're not going to have issues, that they're comfortable on it, and that they don't look like they're scared driving and making a pass across a tee box. So, and sometimes that takes time. Some employees pick it up really quick and some take longer to pick it up. But we don't have the damage. We don't have equipment rolling off in lakes. I mean, accidents happen and things do happen, but not near as much as most. We don't have any major issues with equipment, but you got to have a program and you got to be able to spend the time doing it. It's tough to start it because you've got all of your employees that need to go through it. But once you're through it, now it's just training, you know, the 1 new employee or the 2 new employees that you're bringing on. And so it makes it so much easier. And at the end of the day, when you're trying to hold people accountable for damage that's done to equipment, you can pull this back out and say, well, you were trained and you signed off on the fact that you were, and that you knew what to do. Otherwise, you know, look, all I've got to say as an operator is that, you know, listen, no one taught me how to use that machine. So I was just doing what I thought I needed to do. So from a liability standpoint on our side, we want to make sure that everyone understands the proper way to operate equipment. All right, so I won't spend a ton of time on this, but the second thing that we talked about, the first one, and the first one was keeping your facility organized and your operation clean. The second most important thing about keeping my job as an equipment manager was cutting units, right? Name one thing that's more important than this on the golf course. I mean, if we get an engine that blows up, you know, we buy another one. If I've got a hydraulic issue that I can't figure out, I can probably call somebody, right? But cutting units, I'm going to deal with these every single day, 365 days a year. And so it's the single most important thing that we're going to ever do is manage cutting units. And the level at which everyone manages these is all over the board. And so if you want, you can go and read the article that I wrote on this subject and see where your level falls. I got my website down at the bottom, but level 1, we just need to cut it. All right. So this would be like a golf course that doesn't have grinders, probably sends their mowers out at once a year and has them ground and then back laps to keep them going. All right, so level 2, yes, we grind. So we've got grinders, but we backlap in between, and that's part of the process of just keeping them going. It's more of a, you know, grind a couple times a year and then lap the rest of the time. So level 3, yes, we parallel cutting units. We probably have that plate from the 70s that has a bar across it, and we level the cutting, the rear roller and the reel to each other, and then drop the front roller, and we call that square. So that's what level 3 would be, is you're still grinding and doing the things in level 2, but you've added that you're squaring the cutting unit to it. Level 4, yes, we grind more than we lap. More than likely you're grinding 75% of the time, and then you're backlapping on those odd occasions where you need to get them through another week or two. All right, so level 5, yes, we don't lap reels. All right, so this is where you're more maintaining your reels with the grinder than, and you don't even own a backlapper. All right, so you're definitely going to get a better quality of cut. There's a lot of positives to level 5, and that's probably where I would say between 4 and 5 is generally where a lot of people are, at least here in the States. Level 6, yes, we can measure more stuff. And again, I've got the breakdown of what each of these levels means and what you're doing to achieve those. But measuring more stuff means you're probably got a granite surface plate that you're measuring your cutting units on. And you are trying to dial those cutting units into as tight a tolerance as you can. And then level 7, this is where I live in OCD land. And what this is you're measuring everything, right? You're measuring roller run out, because what tends to happen is everyone's got excuses on levels 1 through 5 on, well, your roller isn't even round. Okay, well, how round is good? What's your standard? Is a roller okay if it's 8 thousandths out or 10 thousandths out or 5 or 2 or 1? What standard do you have set for those rollers and when they need to be replaced? I bet you of everyone I'm talking to right now, we probably don't do that, right? We don't check it. And if we do check it, when do we replace it, or do we just keep going with it, or we just throw another roller on there and go? All right, so the bigger question is, if you're walk mowing greens, how many of those walk mowers have the same roller run out? Meaning the rollers are round, exactly round, right? So you could have one 1,000th, you could have one 5, you could have one 8, you could have one 11. So if you're mowing at 100, 110 thousandths and you've got rollers that on each of those walking greens mowers that are out of round and they're all different, then what are you really cutting greens at? Big question, right? So consistency on green speed from one green to the next, wouldn't that differ? Could quite a bit. And then you've got a drum on the back of it, right? And then you got the, depending on how you parallel the cutting unit, it could be out of square, right? And then we talked about height of cut could be 1 or 2 thousandths off. So the more things I continue to talk about, the further and further and further away from that cutting unit being square and perfect we get. And when you've got 5 or 10 cutting units that you're trying to maintain, how are you maintaining those all to the same spec? Because if, let's say, for instance, you've got one walking greens mower that the real diameter is at 4.5, and you've got another greens mower that the real diameter is at 4.7, 4.8, do those two mowers cut the same even though they're at the same height? No, because the attitude of the bed knife is different between those two reels. So when you're doing a PGA event or an LPGA event or whatever the case may be, and you're wondering, why is that green so much faster than that one? Or when you're splitting a green with 2 different mowers and one looks like it's cutting lower than the other one and the heights are dead on, well, what's the problem? Well, this is probably the problem, or one of the problems. So the idea is, when you get to this level 7, right, is to bring all the tolerances of a cutting unit in as close as you can. You're not going to make it perfect because these machines aren't perfect, but the closer you get it to perfect, the better it's going to be. All right. So something to keep in mind. I encourage you to read that article. It's probably of any that I've written, that's probably the most read article that I've ever written. So it's great because it identifies where you stand and the realization that, look, there's another step. We can be better. We can be better than level 3. We can be better than level 4. We can continue to get better and better and better. And that was the idea behind this, right? Everybody does things differently and has different ways of doing it. This was a way for us to classify those ways and to let you know that, hey, you may be doing it this way and that's fine, but you can do it better. And that was the kind of the whole point of writing this. Continuing education. So this is certainly something that I encourage. And I know I was talking to Eric a little bit about this. This is what the GCSA certificate program, they do cutting units, drives, train systems, electrical systems, engines, fundamentals of turf grass, hydraulics, metal working, and spray systems. We created this back in probably 2010, 11, 12, somewhere in that ballpark. And then GCSA, when we merged our association with theirs, they took this on. They added a couple, and then they revamped the program to kind of match up with what their programs are at GCSA. So great program. Certainly encourage it. Encourage technicians to take this, as well as superintendents that are interested in learning more about equipment management. I think it's important for superintendents to know what's going on in the shop, because if you're depending on the individual in there, you're not going to know what's right or what's wrong unless you bring someone in or you know it yourself. And when you're running equipment that's $1 million, $2 million, I think it's important that the individual that's in the shop know what they're doing and someone to be able to identify that. So the other communication tools, right? So we have this board that we created on the left side. We have our team, any issues that they have with equipment, if someone's not in the shop or if someone's busy, they can write the piece of equipment up and what's wrong with it. And then the guys know what to look for, as well as a schedule on the right side. So for our technician team, we set this schedule up on Monday of that week, so they know what they need to do and what they need to have ready. The schedule on the right, this is something that we do on the ground side of things. We create this schedule so that the technicians can create theirs. And we do this on Wednesday of the week prior. So that way they have plenty of time to get aerifiers ready, top dressers ready, so on and so forth. So it does take a little bit of planning to do this, to make sure that you stay ahead of everything. And on occasion, they know that this will change, but you can definitely see the difference when you're wanting that aerifier to be ready and it isn't, and you're going to have to sit and wait for it. Well, wouldn't it be great if they knew that they needed it? If they do, then you'll always have the things that you need versus, running around like crazy trying to get things done as well. And then profit. So this one's an easy one, right? So the first couple things we talked about the people, and it's important to have great people in order to get that product to look the way you want it to look. One of the things Eric and I were talking about as well was, you could have the healthiest turf in the world, right? But if the mower doesn't cut it well, then what do you have? You have all your guests and members that are out and they see a mower that's streaking down the middle of the fairway on everyone, and you've got some great conditioned turf, but man, it doesn't look good. So that equipment technician or equipment manager that you have in that shop is the last person to touch it outside of the operator to produce the quality and that view that you're trying to go after. And so the importance of that position is, bar none, one of the most important positions on the team, because, my success is dependent on how well they do and how well the rest of the team does. Because I'm not out weed eating. I'm not out setting mowers anymore. I'm not doing those things. So I have to depend on everyone else to do it. And I want people that want that same quality and are looking for that same quality to be on the team. So if you have great people who do great work, won't you have a better product? Does that better product equal more membership, more rounds, more lessons, more F&B sales? Right? What if we made decisions like the money we were spending was ours? Taking the emotions out of equipment purchasing, right? We go in, well, man, I need that new triplex because this, what if we actually had the data to support what we needed and when it needs to be replaced? And we didn't have to go up there and explain anything. If we built a equipment replacement plan that was built off of how many hours a piece of equipment would reach its end of life, and then how many years does it take to accumulate that many hours, and creating a spreadsheet that would show when equipment needs to be replaced. That takes the emotion out. I don't have to go and try to sell something because this is going to tell us when the stuff needs to be done. keeping track of our expenses on a zero-based budget. You know, we do that. It's a lot of work, but whenever I walk into a budget meeting, I don't have issues with my budget being cut because I know where every penny of our money goes. But it also ends up being our agronomic plan because I know what we spent, when we spend it, and what months we spent it in. When I go to create the budget for the next year, I know what months we need what. And so we go through and we create the budget based on what those needs are. And we're taking notes along the way. You know, we have, we had mole crickets that came out a month earlier. So we need to move our application up a month. You know, so there's things like that this allows and helps you do. Tracking our labor and repairs in a PM program, important. Owner says, hey, you know, why do you need a new triplex? Well, this is why. Here's all the data that supports why we need a new triplex. This is the labor we've spent. This is the repair hours. This is the downtime to help sell that. And then tracking our tasks and labor on the golf course. So we use a program, ASB Task Tracker, to do that. And I know a lot of people around the country and I'm sure in Asia as well are using this. But it's great because when we need to justify labor, I can pull up every task that we do on the golf course and I can print it out and take it up to our director of finance and say, okay, you know, here's all of our tasks and this is where all of our time goes. What do you want to not do? You know, generally they'll just look at me and say, well, we don't know what you shouldn't do. Okay, well, you know, look, this is what it takes. I need to understand what you don't want done so that when you come ask me next year why those bunkers look that way, I can say, well, you wanted to cut an FTE, or, you know, we needed to pull back on this or that. You know, there's cause and effect. If a GM comes to you and says we need to cut the budget by 10%, where's it coming from? And if you don't know where it's coming from, aren't the expectations going to be the same next year with 10% less money? Because no one knows what we took away. So just keep that in mind, right? I mean, everything needs to be justified. All this data needs to be collected. And then in the end, this is the results. So, you know, our golf course here on the left, this was before our LPGA event that we hosted in January. And then the shop, you know, this was probably a couple months before the tournament. And the guys had everything mopped up and cleaned up before our volunteers and stuff came in. So, so this is what we're after. This is what we're trying to achieve. And the people is where it starts. When you got the good people, then you get the good product. And then when you have the product, you're going to have the profit. When you don't have the product, people don't want to be a member. They don't want to pay what you're asking. And when they don't pay what you're asking, then you have to lower your fees, right? When you lower your fees, you get less money to spend on the golf course. You get less money to spend on the golf course, and then this just rotates year after year after year, and it gets less and less and less and less. It's a vicious cycle. So my point is, maybe some of these things will help rethink kind of the way that we do things sometimes, and give you a couple of ideas on some new ways to improve and step things up a level. All right, so that's what I have. There's my Twitter. Feel free also to contact me via email. I appreciate your time. Certainly appreciate the opportunity to speak with everybody. It's a joy for me. I was telling Eric, my wife's from Vietnam, or well, her family's from Vietnam, and so she spent a month over there and loved it. And I haven't had the opportunity to go over yet, but hopefully at some point. So thank you, Eric, and I'm certainly here to answer any questions, and I really appreciate it.
Stephen, thank you. That was an awesome presentation. And I'd like to also thank board member Bruce Williams, who we both know and put your name forward for speaking. I now can see why that was really, really comprehensive. In the short period of time, you covered a lot. Enjoyed especially the leadership aspects and selection aspects, which could be applied to any industry. And it was
Sure.
very, very useful. So thank you so much. I have just a quick question on a few things. I have noticed in observing the industry from my position that when you talk about OCD, that sort of mentality, it does seem like that within the superintendent and mechanic side, that is a it tends to be, how would you say, a tendency. Would you agree? And most of your peers that you're working with is very detail oriented as part of the general makeup?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends, because I see technicians that are very, very detail oriented and want to do things better, and sometimes just don't know how to do that. And definitely on I probably see it more on superintendents than I do on technicians, as far as wanting to be that detailed. And you know, sometimes you have to look at it this way too, right? Let's just say, you had 100 pieces of equipment in your facility and you only have one technician. Well, how OCD are you going to be able to be, right? I mean, while you want to do everything the best you can, if you do that, you're not going to have time to do everything else. And so sometimes the individuals that have that trait, which is a great one for this business, don't have enough help to be able to execute what they're trying to execute. And so that's normally the challenge that I have when I go to places, is seeing that, typically there's not enough labor there to get what you're trying to get. And so that's where it ends up going. But definitely more on superintendents wanting things to be perfect. There's no doubt in my mind that we go out and see things that are that no other person on the golf course that's playing it sees. And I get criticized a little bit about that sometimes from our GM, that, look, nobody sees that, so, but I'm seeing it. I want to do something about it. So I think we all kind of have that.
Yeah, I think your point about not having the resources is a key issue. And to that point, I mean, the IGCEMA documentation, and kudos for putting that together for so many years. And it is something that the AGIF, as I related, spoken with the GCSAA to complement or be another sort of element to add to our green certificate of greenskeeping. Would you recommend that type of program to be able to, how would you say, facilitate the orderliness of your business, even when you don't have the maybe some of the underpinnings of an organization like at the Four Seasons or your background? Is that something you find useful, you would recommend?
Yes, because you don't know what you don't know. I mean, what that program does is it qualifies you to do the job. And not necessarily at the highest level, but if you're passing that program, you have a basic knowledge of all of those things. As a superintendent, I mean, it's different for me again, because I know the equipment side. So when I'm interviewing a candidate, I can ask them enough questions to understand whether they know what they're doing or they don't. Most superintendents may not be able to do that. And so the one thing that program does is it helps you separate who knows actually what to do before you have to hire them and go through a couple of months and then say, man, he doesn't know as much as I thought he knew. And then having to go through that whole process again. So that's one aspect of it from the hiring side. I think it sets some candidates apart, because you kind of qualify yourself as being able to do the job. I think the other part of it is, and the point of it, for superintendents, is it's not so difficult that superintendents couldn't get some knowledge from it. And I cannot tell you how much or how important it is that superintendents have some kind of knowledge on equipment management, because, it's just like, taking your car and renting that out to people you don't know. Would you do that? Probably not. But we do that when we don't know what we have in there, and we're trusting someone that we don't know whether they're doing the right thing or not with that $1 million fleet. And then we wonder at the end what happened to our equipment that, looks like it's 20 years old and we've only had it for 2 years.
Yeah, it's a funny story about, we do some on equipment, we do some training with club managers, and one of the Club Managers Association veteran guys, and, he's in a suit and tie, but he says when they do their committee orientation, which they do on rotation, one of the first things he does is he goes down and works with the superintendent and mechanics, and he puts a price tag on every piece of the machinery, in front of them, so that the committee members can understand, the simple price of that piece of machinery and the value of the whole entity. So it's an interesting exercise within that context.
it's a great tool because people don't know what it costs. And one of the things that we did as well is we had a field day down in the shop where we brought members down and we showed them what we go through to set up a cutting unit, just one machine. And that you've got doctors and stuff that are really have to be precise, that are there looking at it and thinking, man, I didn't know you guys had to go through all this just to get one machine. It's a totally different outlook on golf in general, just understanding what goes on behind the scenes.
And that's it. And having a system in place to be able to express it is a key issue.
Yep.
Question on when you mentioned the economic value, of course, of utilizing all your facilities as well. Did you ever do an economic benefit for the CMA type of function where you were able to come back with some data on, improving efficiency, or was that basically on an anecdotal basis?
Yeah, I mean, it was more anecdotal, and the biggest challenge is every place is different.
Yeah, sure.
We get a lot of I'm getting a lot of questions, but same thing about salaries and pay, and there's just so many differences. Some people have more equipment than others, bigger facilities, different expectations. So it's the same question I get asked about, consulting and going into a place. I don't have a boilerplate like thing that I give out to everybody because every place is different. I have to go in, look at it and say, okay, they have the money to do this. They don't have the money to do this. And now, I can create a program based on what they actually need or what they have. And not so much like, all right, here you go, we've made this. And we found that out. We did some surveys, IGCMA, with salaries and wages and things like that. I mean, it's from my standpoint, it's the same as the GCSA survey. You don't know all the outlying factors when you're taking those surveys at what other things are available for people. And so with golf courses being so different acreages, different, expectations, you try to compile all that together and it doesn't, I don't know that it computes, from my traveling.
Yeah, it's the same in club management and other aspects. I think it's I guess you have to do it on a case by case basis. And I guess that drives down to the financial education of the superintendent and his staff. That's something that also is an important thing. Within your certification, is there quite a bit of financial training or, leading you to that phase? Because justifying your spreadsheet to the general manager and to the board is one of the biggest challenges I think a lot of the turf team have out here in Asia.
Right. So in our program, there isn't. I don't know if GCSA added that to the second tier of the program they have put in. I think from our vision on the equipment management side was just to get everyone qualified for a level just on the equipment maintenance side of it, because not every golf course allows the equipment manager to control a budgetary part of the expense. So by creating it, we would separate quite a few technicians from the others, and we didn't want to do that. So, but from the financial side of things, I have found that the more you know about that, and the more detailed you are, it's so much easier to get things done, because that director of finance or GM wants to be able to trust what he's hearing. And when we go in there with thoughts and wishes, and you never get it what you're asking for, because it's quite frankly, he can't sell that. As a GM, you want to be able to sell what the superintendent is telling you he needs. Well, if I don't give you the information or data to support it, I'm trying to sell what you're telling me, and I have no data to support it. And I'm trying to sell it to people that know nothing about golf other than how to play it. And so I think a lot of times we get lost in that everybody should just give us what we need, because the golf course is what runs this stuff. Well, no, there's no business that operates where you just get what you ask for. You got to have some stuff behind it. You got to have that data to support it. Like replacing equipment, you need to have an idea of what end of life, how many hours a piece of equipment needs on it in order to know when it needs to be replaced. And then how many hours you putting on it in a year. It's simple division to find out how many years you can keep it for before it needs to be replaced. And if you did that for every piece of equipment, you would have a program. And then you give that to someone that's the director of finance.
Yeah.
You're not putting your emotions on a spreadsheet. You're putting a replacement program on a spreadsheet, and he can understand that. And he can sell that. He can take that to an owner. He can take that to a board, and that's easy to sell. But you can't sell, I think we need it, so just get it. That doesn't work.
As usual, knowledge is power, right? It's always the same in every scenario.
Yep,
One final
putting it in their terms, I think, too, right?
Yeah.
If I'm a banker, I'm not going to understand what in the world you're talking about. So you got to take what you know and figure out how to make them understand or help them understand what you're talking about, but in their terms.
Final question is, out here in Asia, and I'm sure it's the same in the United States and other parts, there is an outsourcing option too. I mean, there are outsourcers out there who are taking care of multiple courses or one or two, or, within that context and the whole turf management side. What is your view of the pros and cons of that type of structure?
You mean like a management company?
Management or, wholesale, even on the turf side, turf grass management, or, also, and this is a whole nother topic, leasing of equipment, or just, one centralized person who brings in their equipment, et cetera, and does it that way. Because that is becoming a little bit of a trend out here.
Yeah. So, I think, well, there's two different versions of this. I think one, if you're looking at a management company, I think, their goal is to make money. A management company's goal is to make money on a deal, or if they're coming in to manage your golf course, as an example, if you were struggling to make money when you turned it over to them, that doesn't mean you're going to be better off in the end. I mean, this is a question that our hotel company is asked as well. Do you take, we as Four Seasons, we manage hotels, we don't manage golf courses, but we do have golf courses. So,
right.
But their expertise is in hotels, not in golf. And so that's why there's so much explanations and things that have to happen from our end to get it to translate over to the hotel side of it. And so the only problem is if you don't select the right management company, then you can set yourself back on that golf course for years, because taking shortcuts and trying to figure out, cheaper ways of doing things. And in the end, you've got a golf course that's in pretty rough shape that you end up having to take back over and then fix, and you're going to spend millions trying to get it back to where it was. On the equipment side of things, I think eventually it's definitely more of an issue in Europe, or not necessarily an issue, but happens more in Europe, where they have contractors come in and service equipment, and that type of thing. We don't see that as much yet in the US, because we have so many technicians. But the more and more that keep retiring, the same struggles are happening with the dealers. John Deere dealer or Toro dealer or Jacobson dealer, they all struggle to get technicians, field techs, to be able to go out to golf courses. And so the driving factor there is pay. Equipment managers here now, I mean, some of them make over $100,000 a year as an equipment manager managing a fleet of equipment. And there's, I would say, a lot of superintendents that don't make that. So that job has pushed itself into a supply and demand situation, to where it's pushing the salaries up so high that the dealers can't afford to pay for guys. And so now you've got less and less qualified technicians out there because they pulled them off the crew, and they don't have a lot of formal training, which is why the certificate program is so necessary. But overall, I definitely see it more in Europe, and it does make sense more. I mean, the crews are definitely smaller as far as on the golf course. I know that some of the golf courses that do have them in Europe, the technician works on the course and works in the shop. So there's definitely a different, and I think there's a different standard too. The European courses, everybody likes those to be, a little overgrown and a little, rough around the edges. That's the way that golf is. And over here, everything's got to be perfect and clean, and and so that requires time and labor. And so I think it depends on the operation, but there's definitely some good management companies that are out there. I think the big thing is just making sure you pick the right one, because it can be detrimental to the property if you don't.
Understood. Well, thank you, Stephen. I mean, it's been a great session, and mentioning coming out to Asia and Vietnam. It is the hottest market right now in Asia, and certainly love to have you out here and out to Vietnam or to the area. We know that you had about 4 different options on presentations,
Yep.
and this was just one. So maybe at some time in the future you had cut issues, you also had leasing and all these other options, just a wealth of information. Maybe at some time in the future, given your availability, we could get you on again. It's really been very insightful. So I'd like to thank you on the behalf of everybody on the webinar and the AGIF members. I'd really like to thank you for your time.
No, my pleasure, and anytime, always glad to help.
Thank you, Stephen.
right,
Just to close off here, I'd like to thank everybody on the webinar for taking time to attend out of your busy schedule. We do keep aware of the schedule on the AGIF. We have Dr. John Sarakan of the University of Tennessee, Dr. Kevin Kenworthy of the University of Florida coming up, and then on club management, Mr. Kevin Fish. And that's part of our lineup. So please continue to check the website for upcoming webinars. So that's it for now. To all of you, have a good rest of the day and a great weekend ahead. Thank you very much.